Trump threatened to wipe out an entire civilization of 90 million Iran people a few days ago. Then, 1 hour before his own deadline, he blinked and announced a ceasefire. But the twist you probably missed is, the ceasefire he announced was dead before the ink even dried. And Israel made sure of that. Yeah, the story is way wilder than the headlines are telling you. So what actually happened here? Let's back up real quick. We're talking about the US and Israel's ongoing war against Iran. Trump had been escalating hard strikes on oil facilities, Iranian infrastructure, power stations, water desalination plants, transportation infrastructure, you name it. And then he did something that honestly nobody expected from him. He publicly threatened, and I mean directly, explicitly threatened, to destroy an entire civilization, to annihilate Iran's 90 million people. That was the threat on the table. Now, whether you think that's tough guy posturing or something genuinely terrifying, here's the thing. Under international law, directly threatening to annihilate a nation is not protected speech. It's not just bold rhetoric. Legal scholars would argue that's a crime, full stop. But Trump said it anyway. Markets tanked. Lawmakers started losing their minds, and the clock began ticking toward his self-imposed deadline. And Iran? Well, they didn't just sit there. They started surrounding their own power plants and bridges, with civilians, families forming human chains around critical infrastructure. These were to be Trump's targets as well. Now, some people call this using human shields, but hold on. Attacking power plants and bridges in the first place is already a war crime. So if your response to people protecting civilian infrastructure is that's not fair, you're kind of telling on yourself, right? And then it gets even more interesting. Iran had already put a 10-point peace proposal on the table through the Pakistan Prime Minister, who acted as a mediator. They made the proposal before, not after Trump's threat. It included 1. An American guarantee of non-aggression with Iran. 2. Iran maintains control of the Strait of Hormuz. 3. Ending the regional war on all fronts, including against Iran's ally Hezbollah in Lebanon. 4. Withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from all bases and positions in the region. 5. Reparations to Iran for war damages. 6. Acceptance of Iran's right to nuclear enrichment. 7. Lifting all primary sanctions on Iran. 8. Lifting all secondary sanctions on Iran. 9. Termination of all resolutions against Iran by the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. 10. Termination of all United Nations Security Council resolutions against Iran. Now, here's what Trump did with that. Instead of acknowledging the plan existed, he made the apocalyptic threat first. Then, about an hour before his own deadline, he comes out and declares a 2-week ceasefire, citing Iran's 10-point proposal as workable basis for negotiation. He basically tried to make it look like Iran caved because of his threat. The problem here is, that plan was already there. He just pretended it was brand new. And then, wait for it, he credits Pakistan's Prime Minister for brokering the deal. Heartwarming, right? Except the White House reportedly wrote the Pakistani PM's statement for him, and then had him post it so it looked like an independent third party stepped in. Evidence confirming this claim indicates the Pakistani Prime Minister's post initially appeared on X, formerly Twitter, with the header that read "Draft Pakistan's PM message on X," which suggested it was prepared externally or collaboratively. But okay, fine. Ceasefire announced, and it runs for 2 weeks. A double-sided ceasefire. So what happened next? Israel lost its mind. A journalist from Israel's Channel 12 reported almost immediately that Israel didn't like the plan, to say the least. And then, within what felt like minutes of Trump posting the ceasefire announcement on Truth Social, Israel claimed Iran fired missiles at them. The ceasefire was barely born, and Israel was already trying to smother it in the crib. And then came the part that should make your jaw drop. Israel launched 100 airstrikes across Lebanon in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Beirut, the south, the Bekaa Valley, all of it hit while ambulances filled the streets. They bombed a funeral at a cemetery as well, resulting in multiple deaths. This happened after the ceasefire was declared effective immediately. And here's the thing. The U.S. wasn't exactly sitting on its hands either. American and Israeli forces reportedly targeted an Iranian oil refinery on Lebanon Island after the ceasefire announcement. And U.S. military cargo flights and tankers kept flowing into the Middle East through the night. Anyways, the United States and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire, right? And that was followed by peace talks over the weekend in Islamabad, which centered more on control of the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's uranium stockpiles. Not surprising, the first session of talks ended in an impasse. But let's quickly compare Iran's 10-point framework to Obama's Iran nuclear deal, which Trump blew up back in 2018. It had Iran limiting uranium enrichment, making no nuclear weapons, allowing international inspectors, and keeping the Strait of Hormuz open and free. That was the deal. But with the latest Iran framework, Iran controls the strait and charges $2 million per ship just to pass through. Iran makes zero guarantees on enrichment, zero guarantees on nukes, zero agreement on inspectors. That's how wide the gap is. And actually, even that $2 million deal is already moot because the strait is still closed to most ships. So the ceasefire deal functionally collapsed before it even started. So here's where we land. The ceasefire is functionally dead. No deal was reached at the peace talks. Iran remains in control of the strait. The bombs are still falling on Lebanon. Iran is openly declaring victory. And now dozens, actually over 80 Democratic lawmakers are calling for Trump to be removed under the 25th Amendment, calling him genocidal, saying he cannot be trusted with major decisions, especially pertaining to international relations. On a critical note, all of these mean a few things, and none of them are good. It means the U.S. credibility on the world stage just took another massive hit. When you announce a ceasefire and your own ally bombs a funeral within the hour, your word means nothing. Other countries are watching this. Every negotiation, every treaty, every security guarantee the U.S. offers, it all becomes a little less believable after this. It also means the economic pressure isn't going away anytime soon. Closed Strait of Hormuz means global oil supply gets choked. Gas prices go up. Markets stay volatile. And the longer this drags on, the worse those numbers get for regular people just trying to fill their tanks and pay their bills. And it means the dynamic in the Middle East has fundamentally shifted. Whether you love or hate Iran, the outcome of this confrontation, at least so far, looks like a country that held firm against an overwhelming military force and got the other side to blink. That has consequences for how every other country in the region positions itself going forward. That's the story. And until the people making these decisions face real accountability, not tweets, not polls, actual accountability, there's very little reason to believe the next chapter looks any different from this one. What do you think the next chapter of the U.S.-Iran war would look like? Or do you think a formal deal will be reached in the next session of talks before the 2-week ceasefire expires? Please drop your comments below. Thanks for watching. This is World Powers Fusion. We bring you interesting geopolitical updates around the world.